Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Hello, I'm Jeff Kellam, the Parish Associate at the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott. Welcome to this week's edition of Encounter. We are in the holiday, Holy Day season, a season of Hanukkah and Christmas, both fed by stories that have been passed down generation by generation for millennia. We are human beings who tell stories. That's one of the things that makes us human. And we tell stories every day. Yesterday at the drugstore, or on the way to work today, this happened to me. We're telling our stories little bits at a time. And the Hanukkah and Christmas stories, of course, feed other stories, the stories that we read to our children, the plays that we see, the Hallmark movies on television that are all about Christmas. Story after story helps us understand our own stories, of course, putting into focus who we are and who we are becoming. Today, we're going to be talking about story with Dr. Myra Sabir. She is Associate Professor of Human Development at Binghamton University and an Associate Dean in the School of Community and Public Affairs. Yeah. And part of your story is what led me to invite you to be on the program. Yeah. In fact, here's the story of how you came to be here in that chair. Okay. You did a seminar on story or narrative, and two people that I met at the New York State Habitat for Humanity meeting said, "Oh, you should talk to Myra Sabir. She is delightful." So I've set the bar for you.
Thank you.
Tell me about how this life writing exercise came into your own story.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm 27 or so years old and about to get divorced.
Yeah.
And for me, that was traumatic. You know, people get divorced all the time and it's hard, but for me, it was a really significant moment because getting married for me was finally stopping running. I'll just put it that way, okay? I ran away from home at 14. Wow. And I have a traumatic background, and this getting married and having this child I had in my mind, envisioned where we were going and something we were building, and so to find myself at its end and becoming a single mother was really huge. It's like, you know what, I really don't know what I'm doing. I know what I want, but I don't know how to have it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so my instinct was to go back to my earliest memory and to just sift through my life for the significant experiences that had shaped me. I wanted to understand myself. I didn't want to find myself in these really difficult situations going forward. Right. So that was just an instinct. I moved in with my best friend's parents with my daughter, and at night I would go down into their basement. They had a computer down there, and I started writing. And I would come across the difficult memories, and I'd write through them, but my body would still be full of emotion. Yeah. And I knew I wasn't done with that memory, so I'd go back, and I'd write through it again. And then, sometimes I had to do 2 or 3 passes, and I called it wet writing because I was crying and writing. Just working through it though, but sifting, taking things apart, looking at faces and feeling expressions, feeling what was in my own body, really taking it apart and making sense of what had shaped me. And my best friend's mom, her name is Mama Pearl, we call her Mama Pearl, and she asked me, she said, "Myra, what are you doing in that basement?" Because I was down there. It was, enthralled, I guess, by the experience. And finally I finished, and I was a different person. I was at peace, I was relaxed, I used the word self-possessed. I mean, something important had happened in that process, and I knew it. Yeah. And I now have a few degrees studying it, and I now teach it. I'm a narrative psychologist. I reproduce it in my research. It's what I do. It's all I do. Yeah. With my research participants, I simply do with them what I did in that basement. Right. But I've learned, and I don't know how much time you want me to take up with my response, but I've learned the benefits are amazing. I mean, it's a simple, inexpensive thing to do, although it's taxing on the emotional self. you can imagine the psychological health benefits, right? Less stress, less depression, less anxiety. But you can't think of a physical health outcome that isn't also associated with this. Asthma, diabetes, hypertension, cancer recovery. I mean, there's no physical health outcome that doesn't improve by working through the emotional stuff. I mean, there's a lot of data and, you know, decades of research showing its benefits, but basically I just do what I did in that basement and gave it a name, life writing, and
So it began with just your instinct, you said. And now you've studied it so that you're not alone in this process. Others have done this too.
That's right.
And I was fascinated with the fact that when you were doing your graduate studies in Atlanta, you were doing this with people on the street, on soup kitchens or wherever. And they would sit at a table and write, or did you talk?
Talk.
Okay.
When in some populations, like I'm also a gerontologist. Love old people.
Yeah.
So I've done it with old.
I'm quite old.
Me too.
Oh, okay.
You know, the one population of people I worked with were between 60 and 92, right? So we weren't writing, we were talking.
Right.
And then in the early years of my work, it was always talking. I was writing in the basement, and then when I did my studies, I learned that writing has a slightly added benefit to talking. But talking is effective, and it's great too, right? And there is always some talking in my work. I mean, we spend some time writing, and then we talk. But no, with those people, we were not writing, but we were talking.
So that was an interview situation, one-on-one, or was it in a group?
It's a group of 8.
Okay.
A group of 8 people and myself is usually how it works. And I've done it with larger groups, but in my courses, like for example, we do some life writing in my class, but we kind of do it in a different way and kind of pair them up and let them hear each other, you know? But when I'm doing it, it's 8 people in myself.
It was, I remember many years ago when I was a pastor, an associate pastor and youth worker in Richmond, we took our kids to a homeless shelter. They were going to bring cookies or something at Christmas time. And the people there, some of the people in the shelter loved telling their story.
Oh, yes.
How did I get here? And it was like instructive to the kids, like, don't let this happen to you. But there were others who said, I'm comfortable with this life. And the kids were fascinated by the fact that you could be comfortable living not quite on the street, but in a shelter.
Very interesting.
So that was a natural kind of interview situation, just a conversation. But the kids came away with it with real learnings.
You know what strikes me is stories are what make us visible to people. Like, so I could, you know, I can sit here with you, and if I don't learn anything about you, other than the fact that you are organizing this show and you invited me, and maybe you hear something about me, right? The only part of you that's visible is what I see. I don't really see you, but your story makes you visible to me. And so what strikes me about your kids being at this shelter is that those people who are very often invisible are made really visible to somebody. So I think maybe it was beneficial to your children, but it was probably quite beneficial to them too, right? Just being able to share who I am and what I think about my life to somebody who's interested.
So we've been talking about people who were having some difficult life experiences and who were older, but you have also used this technique with pre-admissions students at Cornell, where you also did some graduate study. What was that like to transition from gerontology to pre-college and asking people to tell their stories?
It's not really different. The content is different, right?
Yes,
so older people have a need, they have a life stage need to tell their stories, right? This is very important to them on a lot of levels. In terms of psychology, it's a matter of looking back at the life and coming to terms with it. You know, can I look at all of it, the good and the bad, and say, that was worth it, right? And Erickson calls it despair versus integrity, right? You can sort of sail on out with a sense of integrity, you know, or be in quite a bit of despair over it, you know. So, and you know, there's a lot we can say about that, but so older people have this real important life stage need to tell their stories, right? And then young adults are doing something different, right? And it, you know, it becomes important. It can be important at different stages too, like midlife. You've heard this midlife crisis idea, right? Some people call it mid-course correction. It's a way of looking back and, you know, okay, I've gotten this far. What do I really want to do with this life?
That
right?
red sports car really helps me with my mid-course correction.
Did it?
Yeah.
And then young people, you know, like I was 27, right? Also trying to say, okay, you know, they call it a quarter-life crisis, I think, you know.
Yes.
But it's a process of integrating the past so that you can be more present in the future, in the present, more present now, and I guess move through life the way you want to, kind of a use. But same use, really. An integration process is the same thing, just different. Looks a little different at different points.
So, comparing once again the young adult to the older adult and the way they tell their stories, is there truth telling? We're not writing fiction here,
no.
Unless we kid ourselves.
Right. Well, it's all subjective. It is completely subjective. Like, if you were doing my work, the truth in terms of somebody, if somebody else was there, let's say your sister was there, and she said, no, that's not what happened, blah, blah, blah. That's really not what's important. What's important is your subjective interpretation of it. Yeah. And I have to make that clear to people. We're not after some objective truth, but your subjective experience. Yeah. How did you experience it? What meaning did you make of it? There's actually about 3 questions. We say, what happened? How did it feel, and what did it mean? What meaning did you make of it? Yep. Otherwise, it's, you know.
So take anything that happened to your life, or to happen to you in your life. Right. That rejection letter from college. Yes. Or the draft notice for those of us of a certain age. The relationship that broke up or didn't. Yes. So the 3 questions again are what?
Yeah. What happened?
What happened?
Right. How did it feel?
Right.
That's a big one because people don't really want to do the emotional part. But this isn't going to work without that. Yeah. What happened? How did it feel? And what meaning did you make of it?
What did I learn from it? Yeah.
I mean, you'll learn from it now in this process. Not what you learned from it, but what sense did you make of it? That meant that she doesn't like me. That meant. It always is some form of rejection. It meant what form of now I work with difficult memories. No. Okay, you know, I don't do the positive memories, although that's part of life. My goal is therapeutic. So I'm working with the difficult memories. So and if I were to sort of give a simple assessment of what kinds of memories people need to work through, they're always rejection experiences. Yeah. Always. Yeah. So what meaning do you make? You might find different forms of it, you know, but so what meaning did you make of it? Yeah. Now you're going to learn from it by working through it now. You're going to have a real learning experience now, right? Right. And I could say more about that because, you know, you're older, you have perspective that maybe you didn't have then, and the older you and the younger you are working together to come to terms, right? Right. And settle the issues. So, yeah, so what happened? How did it feel? And what did it mean? Yeah.
Our guest today is Dr. Myra Sabir. She's the Associate Professor of Human Development at Binghamton University, and we're talking about life writing. The term attachment, now you've used attachment rather than relationship. Yes. Do they mean the same thing, or is there a distinction? Yeah,
there's a very definite distinction. So when we say attachment, it's a psychological term, and it means that warm, affectionate relationship that every baby has to form with another human being in order to survive, right? So so babies come expecting warmth and affection, and anything less than that is shocking. Yeah, yeah. Would you, right? Yeah. Right? So babies come with an expectation of warmth and affection. Well, the quality of warmth in that relationship is what we're calling attachment. It can be warm, and we call that secure attachment. It can be warm, cool, or it can be cool. Yeah. Right? And if it's cool, it's insecure attachment. And both of those set you on trajectories, lifelong. And my work is designed to come and help do some repair of it when it was cool. Yeah, does that make sense?
The correction, the mid-course, or earlier than that.
It is. And there's a woman named Mary Main at Berkeley. When I was in graduate school, she is when I found my footing and knew where I was going to be going from for the rest of my career. I knew my experience in the basement. I knew this was all important to me, but her work, she was working with adults, and both fathers and mothers, and she found that those who had difficult experiences with their parent, with their caregiver, usually that's the woman, right, the mother, those who had difficult experiences with them, who had worked through them, were able to then correct that with their own children, have secure attachment, establish secure attachments with their own children. Yeah. But those who couldn't were not establishing secure, it's an intergenerational continuing thing unless you can interrupt it in some way. But what's an interesting thing about her work is that the way she could tell whether or not you had worked through it was the coherence that in which you were able to tell your story, right? So if I said, oh, I had the best mom, she was just so loving, she slapped me around a little bit every now and then, but she was really a great mom. Yeah, well, there's something incoherent about that,
yes, right?
But I could say my mother slapped me around and it was hard and I had to work through that. She had her own problems, that I came to understand, and even though the hardship is there, you're talking about it in a coherent way. You're not, fitting things that don't fit together, right?
Yeah,
so the degree of coherence in the telling is how she could tell they had worked through it. Does that make sense? I hope that's clear.
Yeah.
I found that fascinating, that she measures secure attachment by coherence in the story anyway,
Well, so the difference, though, we've talked about telling the story and then writing the story. I'm thinking about the times that I've done some journaling, and you're told, don't worry about what you learned in English, your freshman comp class.
Absolutely.
Just write. Yes. Don't worry about what, it's not going to be graded.
Right.
And in the intensive journaling workshops that I went to, they said, you don't even put your name on the journal, you have a number.
Beautiful.
So that you can write,
Beautiful.
And if you should leave it on the subway or on the bus, it's still private.
Yes.
This is you're only writing for you.
That's right.
Is that right?
And both of those are recognized and a part of this work. So grammar, spelling, none of that. We say, forget that. That's really, and it's private writing. Nobody ever sees it but you. Yeah. Because you're not going to be honest, deeply honest, if you are afraid somebody's going to see it. Yeah. So we do both of those things. That's a good idea to put a number on it, but I never even see it. I never see people's writing. When they do the writing, and then after that, I don't say, what did you write about? I just say, what was it like to write about that? So they get to tell me what they felt, and oh, I was surprised that I thought I had dealt with that, or a certain memory came back. So they never have to tell me the content, just the experience of writing. Now, a lot of times, if we've established a kind of what I call sacred environment there and trust, people do share because they feel safe enough to, right? But they don't have to, and I really have to make it clear, this is private. This is your work with yourself.
But they've also rehearsed it. So they're not telling you cold if they've written it and then you're asking a few questions.
Yeah, but I don't ask them like what they wrote. But you're right. They have. They've spent. Yeah, they've rehearsed it. Yeah, they certainly have. Yeah.
You went to seminary. You said.
You learned that just a minute ago.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah, I did.
And do you mind sharing why you didn't go to seminary to become a pastor or a counselor? Or you went to seminary for insight.
Right, I did. So I grew up in the Bible Belt South.
Yeah.
And religion is everywhere in the South. I grew up, everybody in my family, more or less. But and I used to have all these questions that I would actually ask ministers questions, and they would tell me, well, you just have faith, we don't talk about. I mean, they literally would stop talking, and I was really. I just had all these questions, and at some point I thought, what, maybe if I just go to the place where they study this stuff, I can engage these questions, and I was able to, and it was an important part of my life. Yeah. It was an important part of my life. I was able to put that to rest in a way that I don't think I would have been able to without going there and just working through that. No, it was never about becoming a minister. It was about making sense of my life experience.
Right.
Yeah.
The experience of working now, you're sharing this in an academic setting. Yeah. But it's still very personal. It's not just another course where you're feeding back what you've read out of the syllabus or the text. But let's transfer this now out of the classroom into folks who are listening, watching on television, listening to the radio.
Yes.
What are their steps now? Now having heard part of this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next steps.
Next steps. Well, I mean, I've written a workbook called the Life Writing Workbook. by Ahi. It has a pseudonym, A-I-H-I, because most of my stuff was with my dad, and he was still alive, and there was no need to embarrass him. And so there's a lot of names changed and all that stuff, including mine. But that's available on Amazon, and you can take it and go do your life writing. So thank you for the opportunity to tell about.
And what's it called again?
The Life Writing Workbook.
Okay. How
to work through your life's unresolved emotional experiences.
Myra Sabir.
By Ahi.
Oh, Ahi. Okay.
By
You're
Ahi.
using that.
I use a pseudonym.
Okay.
But you know, there's another. How much time do I have?
We have about 6 more minutes.
Okay, so there's an exercise. I don't know where the camera is.
You can look at that one.
That one. But there's an exercise that you can do that will give you a quick sense of the residual emotions that you might still be carrying. So if you took a piece of paper, you fold it in half, number it 1 to 5, and just write a sentence that lists the 5 most difficult experiences you've ever had. Not the second most difficult experiences, but the 5 most difficult experiences you've ever had. Just list them, right? Take the time to identify those. And then the second thing to do is to, beside each of those experiences, be very precise about identifying the emotion in your body at this moment, okay? So you got to be precise about identifying the emotion. If you say, I was so mad I punched a hole in the wall, but what you were feeling was disappointment, you miss it. You weren't mad, you were disappointed. So you have to be very precise about identifying that emotion, okay? So you got the difficult things, you've taken your time to be very carefully list what you feel, what you're feeling right now, and then rank it 1 to 5. How strong is that emotion in my body right now? Just rank it. And when I ask people to do this, we get a lot of 3s, 4s, and 5s still. You and me, age-based 60-ish, from stuff that happened 60 years ago or 50 years ago. Today I'm carrying that, and the emotion reaches the same level when I think about it right now. Okay? And so if you've got a 3 or a 4 or a 5 on that page, that is what's standing between you and a lot of things, health, in a lot of domains, being able to create it in your life what you want. I mean, this actually, you know, that is standing between you and a lot of good outcomes. So whenever I do this with people, I was at a place yesterday and we did this, and people are surprised, you know, that it's still in there. It lives in you. That little girl and that little boy is in there waiting, you know, for you to come.
Oh, I still tell people about when I flunked out of college. I'm studying to be a minister, and I'm playing with radio, and I'm playing with the photography in the dark room, and I forgot to study. Not just once, not twice, 3 times, and you're out. So, you know, that would be one of the things that I would be writing about. And it wasn't, you know, that's a personal thing. It's very personal.
Everything. All this is personal.
But I also had to tell my father, who was scrimping to put me through college. That was the hardest part. So, you know, that's one of the things I would write about today, I think. You know, how did I feel? What happened? How did I feel, and what did it mean? This and this idea, once again, of writing means that you'll be able to go back and look at it again. Yes, and you denature it this time. Like people say, well, you know, do I have to go over and over and over? No. We've written carefully out how to do it, and, and of course in my workshops I carefully guide people through the process. Let's say you are, you know, you're with your parents over a 15-year span or so, and there was a similar dynamic that happened over and over again, right? If you pick the worst one and you work carefully through that one, you denature all of its kind. So you don't have to find every difficult memory and write through every one. You just have to find the most difficult, the one that captures it best, and work through that carefully. You know, there's some mourning, there's some, you know, crying and working it out, right? But you release that, and you denatured all of that kind. So it's, you know, I don't know if that answered the question you were asking. And I think, you know, that some folks who are paying attention to our conversation may be thinking, what's this got to do with Christmas? Here we are in the Christmas season, we're talking about this. But this is a time when emotions are often quite raw. Disappointment, frustration, the tension of it all. This is the perfect time to be talking about this. It is. Family time. Oh yeah, I agree. And let's talk, just to flip it for about two minutes, what we have left. What about writing about not the pain or the dysfunction? What about writing about the celebrations and the good stuff?
Yeah. You know, I don't, you know, I just kind of, like I said, I reproduce what I did in that basement, you know.
Yes.
I know this, I don't know. But there is some research showing that processing positive experiences can also have similar benefits. I'm not as familiar with that work, but I do know that at the end of the workshops that I do, it's not like all tough stuff. You know, if I had to draw the emotional journey, it would be like this, and you dig in really deep, and then you feel better for the rest of your life, right? So at the end, we write about the good feelings that I have now. Wow, you know, what has changed in terms of the sort of baseline level of emotion in my being right now, you know, and what does that mean for my future? What just happened, and you know, what does that mean? So we do actually end with looking at positive emotions that are an immediate result.
Well, when healing takes place, you may as well celebrate it.
Exactly, and we do. But in terms of the general, you know, writing about positive experiences, you know, there is some research talking about the benefits of that. I just don't know. I don't know it. It isn't what I have spent my time learning. But there may be some people who would argue that it's just as beneficial. You know, I just don't know that research.
Well, I want to first of all, congratulations on tenure.
Thank you.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And we're so happy that you're in the community. We've been talking today with Myra Sabir, Dr. Myra Sabir, who is Associate Professor of Human Development at Binghamton University and also Associate Dean of Communications of Community and Public Affairs, the School of Community and Public Affairs. It's been a delightful experience. I've learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to kind of now experimenting over the next few days and doing some writing too.
Wonderful.
Attachment Repair and Life Writing, and once again, quickly, the name of the book that's available on Amazon.
It's called Life Writing Workbook.
Great.
How to Work Through Your Life's Unresolved Emotional Experiences by AIHI, A-I-H-I.
Great. Thank you for joining us for our Encounter program. I'm Jeff Kellam, the Associate, no I'm not, I'm the Parish Associate at Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott, hoping that in the coming week you'll be gentle with people and with yourself. And we thank WBNG TV and also Town Square Media for airing our program. We'll see you again next week when we'll be sharing some Jazz Noel from Bill Carter and the Presby Bop Quartet. That's coming up next week on Encounter. Have a good week.